بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعنا على العمل بما علمتنا. O Allah, we ask you to teach us or benefit us, and let us benefit from what we learn and increase our knowledge, and let us practice what we learn. Inshallah, today I'm just going to review very briefly what we did last time, inshallah. All these halaqas are continuous halaqas, okay? So one is based on the other until we get to the names, inshallah. Each name will be individually done. Last time, we start talking about, we really need to understand that the intellectual power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts in us, which is mentioned in the Quran numerous times, in the forms of أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ أَفَلَا يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. We really need to understand on how our brain functions. That's very important to answer a lot of questions that comes up towards Al-Aqidah. We talked last time, we said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created our intellect, our brain. He gave us the freedom of choice to choose or believe in. He gave us al-fitrah, the instinct. This is kind of internal thing. It tells you what's right and what's wrong. He gave us the desires, the shahawat, the desires to have money, to mate, to be somebody important. And He gave us the universe. And we mentioned that the shaitan, if you are off the road, he will leave you alone. The moment you decide to turn back and go toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're going to start having all of these ideas and questions that we've never even thought about before. About the creation, Allah, how He looks like, where He come from, and all of these questions are going to come up. But if you're not on a straight path, you don't need that. You're already out there. So these questions are okay, it's normal response. What is most important is that for our children to understand these concepts, because as they go to college, and they're going to hear a lot of different theories about everything, and they're going to question everything. Al-Aqidah, the creed, is this what we believe in, and that's what drives our actions. A sound mind, a sound intellect that is free from external and internal influences, it will only take you one way. It will only take you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. External influences like, I want to have a big house, I want to have a big car, so I'm going to do everything I can to get that much money. If that comes to your brain, sometimes it'll make you do things and believe things against what your intellect is telling you it's right to do. We threw example last time, smokers. You ask a smoker, does smoking hurt you? Yes. Why do you smoke? So they overcome their intellect, and because they desire something externally, they were willing to disbelieve what their mind is telling them. And internal things, just like bigotry, racism, arrogant, all these internal things that we have inside, it will cloud our minds and make us make the wrong decisions. Another important thing we talked about is that our mind is limited. Our power of thinking is limited. And anyone who said that our brain, our intellect has no limits, they are really not telling the truth. And we proved that last time. We said, when you go to sleep, you lose your mind. When you have certain medication, you lose your mind. If you drink something haram, you lose your mind. And if you get too old and get dementia, forgetting things, you lose your mind. That's how weak the mind is. So it has, the mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to us is a very sophisticated machine. Think of it as like a very highly sophisticated scale. that measures 1/1000th of a gram up to 1 kilogram. I've heard of a scale these days, if you take a piece of paper and you write one word and you measure it again, it'll show you how much the words weigh. So it's a very delicate, very sensitive scale. If you take this scale, and the one who were you last time, I showed you my tool. If you take this scale, put it on the ground, and drive your car over it, you want to see how much your car weighs. What's going to happen to the scale? It's going to be destroyed. There's nothing wrong with the scale. It's just the car too big. And that's when we start thinking about things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create our brain to really understand. It's just too much for us. That's when people get lost. Another reminder quickly, just to let you, we talked about that as far as existence, there are three things that our mind judge on these things. Number one is that something must exist. What that means is our intellect, our brain, our thinking process, the sound mind will not accept anything but the existence of that thing. And there's only one thing that must exist. It's not possible. It must exist. And the only one is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything else can go to two categories. It might exist. I mean, I'm here now, I might not be here now. Everything you see, all the universe is a possibility. It could exist and it could not exist. And there's also things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in our brain that is impossible to exist together. For instance, light and darkness. Okay? You can't have light and darkness at the same time, at the same moment, in the same place, in the same form. It's either light or darkness. You can't have a motion and stand still at the same time for the same object, for the same time, in the same place. You're either walking or not walking. Still. So these kind of a little bit of reminders of last time things we talked about. What I really want to talk about today is a very important laws about the intellect, how we think. And this is going to become very important when we start talking about inshallah next halaqah, about the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we know that Allah exists? And this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put these laws in our brain to use it correctly. I'm just going to go over 4 main ones. Number 1, your sound mind will not accept, it's impossible intellectually to have an effect without a cause, to have a change without something making the change. Okay? You can come up with all different theories. Okay? But to have a change without a power that making the change is impossible for the mind, for the sound mind to accept. A very close real life example, if we have a scale and it has 2 parts and they're equal, and all of a sudden these old scale, they have 2 parts, you saw one side coming down and the other side is going up. Your sound mind cannot accept the movement of the scale down, this part and the other one up, unless there is something either pulling down on this side or added weight to this side. So the change has to come from a power. Something has to cause the change. This is a mind, intellect, brain law that cannot be broken. Now you can think anything else you want to think, but you cannot accept that. You cannot accept a change without power that's causing the change. The other one is, it's impossible to have a sequence to infinity. Okay, I came from my father came from my grandfather, and then keep on and on and on and on. You have to get to a point where everything started. And when that everything started, whomever started that thing, that's the source of everything. And you might say, well, what started that thing? That thing you came to is the must exist, because, okay, what started that thing is another thing, and you keep on going for infinity. Your sound mind cannot accept that. You can write papers about it, you can tell people it happens, but your sound mind cannot accept it. You're going to reach to the point where something started this, and you really can't ask the question, where did that thing come from? Because if you do, you're going to go back to the same sequence. This came from this, until you reach to the main, to the one that must exist. And everything is going to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The third law, if you look around you in this universe, everything has a purpose. Everything has a goal in Allah's creation. Some of them we know it, and some of them we don't know it. So when everything has a purpose, that means whomever created this thing must be of a great wisdom and a great power. For example, if we get like a cup of ink and a piece of papers and we throw them in a dishwasher for about an hour, and then we open the dishwasher and we saw Webster Dictionary all printed out nicely. Would any mind will accept that? You won't accept that. Whomever wrote the dictionary, people who thought about the words, where it goes, where it comes, it just things cannot come up from chaos. In the true world, there is no chaos in the world. So your mind cannot accept that. Only accept that somebody sit down, some power, some whatever it is, sit down and set things together. And the last one I want to tell you about is, and you probably heard that before, is that, for something, it cannot be, the cause and the effect, it cannot be the same. Let me simplify it for you. They talk about the egg and the chicken. Who comes first? Okay, the chicken came from the egg came from the chicken, the mind doesn't accept that. Okay, something has to start the chicken, or something has to start the egg. And in our deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started the egg and the chicken. Okay, so you always go back and forth. Your mind does not accept that. It has to be a solution for it. You can't say the chicken from the egg and the egg from the chicken. Who comes first? Everything has an answer. Okay, so it must be another power that created the egg and the chicken. Okay, so this is, finish a little concept about how our mind works. And really out of these is the most important thing is to understand that every cause, every change in this world has to have a power that changes. The new concept is what's called the imagination. And this is when people get lost, real easy. Imagination, or imagining things, you cannot imagine anything that does not exist, that you do not have an experience with. And a lot of people get really, they don't believe that. if you sit down and just imagine anything, you have to have whatever you imagined, know it before. You cannot imagine something that does not exist, that you don't have experience with. You go home and try it. I can sit here and I tell you I imagine a real donkey. Okay, a real donkey, and it has a car wheels on his legs. And he has two small wings on the side. And his tail is the wing of an airplane. You've probably never seen that. I've never seen that. It probably doesn't exist. This is out of my imagination. But now go back about each detail of this imagination. I know the donkey, I know the airplane, I know the wheels. I just put things together to bring something new. But you cannot imagine something that does not exist. And that's when people get in trouble. When trying to imagine how Allah looks like. Trying to imagine, well, how there's no beginning for Him. I can't even imagine that. Of course you can. Because you've never had an experience with something that has no beginning. That's when people, I can't imagine that, so I won't believe it. Be careful between imagination and intellect. That's when people get in trouble. That's when all these atheist theories comes down. That's all these things that try to make you iman shake on the inside. You can't imagine that. How you believe in that? Well, go back to the basic. No one on this face of the earth can imagine something that does not exist. They have no experience with it. You can take part and put them together and come up with something new. But you have to have a prior experience with these parts. Go home and try it. So that's a very important thing to understand. And another very important point is that your mind and your intellect will believe in something 100% certainty, but you can't imagine it. Your mind has the capacity to believe in something 100% that exists, but you are unable to imagine that thing. I know this might sound boring, maybe it's philosophical, but really to go to build the structure, you have to have a foundation, because that's the problem we get into when questions start being asked. But inshallah we'll move on to the most juicy parts inshallah next time, but I want to finish these with you. Let me give you an example of this. You will believe 100% in something but you can't imagine. Imagine somebody who is blind from birth. Okay? They've never seen anything. And they live their life and they hear all the time, look at this red flower. Look at this red orange. Oh, that red car looks pretty. So they hear the word red, a color. And you ask them, they believe that color exists because everybody's talking about it. But do you think they can imagine what the color red looks like? No matter how hard you start explaining to them. They will never be able to imagine what the color red looks like, but there are certain that exist. This person talk about the red thing, and this different people, different talking about the red color. So even though your mind believe in it 100% certainty, your imagination cannot help you. Like this person who's blind. Same thing with deaf people. You can sit to them and talk to them and move your mouth. They believe you're talking, but they can't hear you. They can't even imagine what the sound sounds like. What's your sound is different from the bird, from the car, from something else. But they are 100% certain in their mind, in their intellect, that this thing exists. So just keep in mind about the imagination and the true intellect. We move on, inshallah, to a very important aspect, and this is going to help us, inshallah, in proving that, our deen is a scientific, realistic, intellectual deen. Okay, it's not something we catch from other people, believe in it and walk like a lot of people think. How do we acquire knowledge? How do we know things? There are three main ways that we know things. First of all is the sensory perception. Our senses tell us what things are, what the car look like, what the tree look like. We gain knowledge from our eyes, ears, touch, taste. So the thing we are learning about, we see it in front of us, and its effect we see it. Like the fire. We see the fire burning, we bring a sheet of paper, we put it on the fire, the sheet of paper burns. That's easy to believe. You don't need to have a proof for that. The next one that we acquire knowledge, the method is very important. And this is what I call it is the intellectual perception. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put this capacity in our mind is that we are able, just by using our sound mind, to know the existence of something just by knowing its effect. Without our sensories recognizing what's causing the effect, what's causing the change. Okay? I brought this today, I like this, I got it from one of these science museums. Okay? If I hold this like this and just let it go, it's just going to hit the table. Okay? But if I put it here gently, the other side, it's going to suspend in the air. I'm not holding it. This thing is not touching it. And this is just a support so it won't go that way. So here it just falls. But here, for some reason, it just stays. I don't see what's holding it in the air. And I don't smell it. And I can't taste it. And I can't hear it. Does anybody have any doubt that there is some sort of force holding this up? You can come here and look. You can take it there. Just give it to Hannah, she'll show you how to use it. We'll give you another example. Hannah knows how to use it. Just take it back there. And go there. My daughter Hannah knows how to show it to you. So do we have a doubt that something holding it up? Another example. In this room right now, there is something we can't see. There's something we can't feel. We can't smell. We can't taste. But all of us right here is 100% yaqeen certainty that exists. Look up in the ceiling. What do you see? You see the fan going. Anybody in his mind have a doubt that there must be electricity going through wires making that fan move? And if we turn the wires, it will be just plastic wires. Nobody has a doubt that there is electricity coming through here and the fan is turning. We don't see the electricity. We see the effect of the electricity going through the motor and the fan is turning. Without a doubt. If I said, oh no, there's no electricity there, it's just I did it like this and I'm turning it with my finger. It doesn't work that way. So subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put examples for us everywhere. Everywhere you go, everywhere you look, He is telling you He's there. And in this part of the brain, when you read the Quran, there's 1,000 plus ayah in the Quran is telling us, either ordering us or telling us to look around you. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ, and so on and so on and so on. If you think about it just casually, أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ, it's very nice, and walk away. No, that's not what Allah wants. This is no playing games here. Right now you see everything turning green. Subhanallah. It is so pretty. This is how Allah talks to us all the time. It's mentioned in the Quran, how the rain comes and the life comes up. Even though we don't see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't hear Him, all these sensories not there, but we know He's there, and this is very important. And repeated so many times in the Quran. Because if we use the first part, which is the sensory part, there's no test for us. So this is going to play a major role in knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, and you can actually take it with you everywhere you go. And the last part, how we acquire knowledge, is truthful information that we can get from a trustworthy source. You know a friend, you've been with them for 20 years, they never lied to you. They went to China, they saw something, they came to you and said, look, I went to China and this is what I saw. Knowing that person is trustworthy, you're going to believe what they say. These days we believe what the news agency says. But if you get the information from a trustworthy source, that's when we get the accurate information. In our deen, it's the Quran and the true Sunnah. Okay, so three ways how we get knowledge: sensory, intellect. We can know the existence of something by its effect, and from the truthful source of information. The type of knowledge, the type of information we have, there's two major types. There are the known world that we see, that we hear, that we feel, and there's the unseen world. Okay? The known world, we see it with our sensory. The unseen world, there are two parts. One that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept to Himself, and another part that keep emerging as we move on. Okay? And that's one thing that Allah is trying to tell us, that not because you don't know about it, you didn't see it, you never hear it, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. If we go back 300-400 years ago, before we invented the microscope, if you tell somebody, there's a lot of creatures in this drop of water, they probably won't believe you, because you can't see it. You look at it, you can't see it, but then you put it under the microscope and a whole new world shows up. This world was hidden from you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought it back up. Okay? The phenomenon of the electromagnetic waves and transferring information and sounds and now pictures across the air without you even seeing these waves. Go back 200 years ago and show one of these people there the phone you have. Don't even show them, just tell them about the phone. Okay, just tell them, we got a piece of plastic in your hand, you can talk to your relative in the other side of the world, it can show you pictures, it can talk to you. They're probably going to tell you, which grass did you eat from last night? They can't even imagine that. And these days, some of these devices are annoying to us. But you think about the greatness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to us to invent these things. 200 years ago, people at that time, they won't even dream about it. So, the point is, unseen, hidden, that doesn't mean does not exist. I'm going to stop here with this philosophy and mind-blinding juice, but it's really important because as we go inshallah in these halaqas and knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intellectually and through the Quran and Sunnah will be very helpful. Okay, I'm going to do a 5 minutes introduction. From now on inshallah we're going to do the 14 main characters, names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are, first we're going to start with the al-wujud, the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intellectually and from the Quran al-Kareem. Okay? And then the next one we're going to talk about al-hayy, the living. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-hayy. We're going to talk about that character. We're going to talk about the character. We're going to talk about how we apply that character to everyday's life, and how we are going to practice these names. Okay? These lectures are not pure info lectures. This is, you take it, you practice it. Okay? There is a manual and there's a practice to build the table like we said last time. It's not something you take in your mind and you sit down. No, this is how you can practice what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says وَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا, to Him has the great names, so make dua with Him with these and also live these. Allah, okay, the one is the wujud, the existence. The second one, al-hayy, the living. Then we're going to talk about al-wahid, proving that Allah is one in His entity, in His characters, in His name and His actions. Al-awwal, one of these has no beginning. Al-akhir has no end. Al-qayyum, He's the sustainer of everything. Laysa kamithlihi shay', very important one. Nothing's like Him. Al-Qudra, He has the power to do everything possible. The will, Al-Irada, Al-Alim, He knows everything. Al-Sami', He hears everything. Al-Basir, He sees everything. Al-Kalam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk, not like us. Laysa kamithlihi shay', nothing like Him. And then Al-Khaliq, the Creator. So each one of these, inshallah, we're going to do individually. Now, the names and the characters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these are what we say in Arabic, waqfiyya, which means you don't add anything, you don't take away anything. It's absolute for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the all-knowing, that means He knows everything. Okay, it's the absolute no limitation to His names and characters. We don't make new characters, we don't take away new characters. Everything mentioned in the Quran and the true Sunnah, that's only the ones we deal with. And His names and characters are forever, in the past and the future. It doesn't change. No matter how He subhanahu wa ta'ala create universes over and over, He doesn't get weak. Okay? لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. And we don't change the meanings. We don't give examples of the names and characters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're going to run the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Yadullahi fawqa aydihim, Allah's hand is on top of their hands. You don't sit down and use your imagination, think of Allah's hand like ours. Remember, if you imagine something, you have to know it before. And Allah told you, Laysa kamithlihi shay', nothing like Him. So if nothing like Him, it's obviously it didn't come to you. So don't make stuff up. We take it as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah has a hand. How is the hand? What it looks like? This is none of your business. You are not Him. You start doing that, you get into a lot of trouble. Okay? So we don't make example. And in my halaqas, when I give you examples, just keep it in your mind all the time. I'm not astaghfirullah al-azim telling you, okay, this person is just like Allah. Astaghfirullah al-azim. No. When I do the examples like Allah taught us in the Quran, it's easier for us to understand. Okay, Allah laysa kamithlihi shay, nothing like Him. And His names and His characters not just for memorization, because trust me, as you go in your day, every move, every situation you have, you're going to find Allah's name that matches that thing. And if you remember it, and if you ask Him with it, and if you practice it, you will be living in heaven. Even if everybody in misery, you will be living in heaven. No matter how much hardship you have, no matter how trouble you got, because you know that He is behind you, because you remember Him. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. And thank you for listening and coming with us today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If you have any question related to this halaqah, inshallah, if I know the answer, I'll try to answer some of these questions, inshallah. Sorry for all these technical terms and stuff, but really it's very important to keep it, to understand it. If you need to, I'm recording all my halaqahs. If you want to listen to it again, inshallah, just get in touch with me. I'll be able, inshallah, to give you a copy of it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.